So before we get into the episode, here are things that you're going to learn from today's show. When a father says to a son, son, you can do it. You got this. It's heaven for him. In case your father is still alive and he was an absent father, embrace what is left of him. Fathers need their sons as much as sons need their fathers. In boys' lives, the normalization of men and boys normalizing the abandoning of their fathers in their lives, therein is the root cause of their problems. I grew up in a single-parent household. My mother divorced my father before I was in primary school. My father was a drug user and a drinker. He beat up my mom often, and that generally made her life a living hell. After they got divorced, my older sister and I would visit my father on weekends. But as we grew older, he slowly drifted away from us until one day he packed up all his belongings and moved to another state without even saying a simple goodbye. And I was only 10 years at the time. From then on, we never heard from him, not even a simple birthday gift. It's been over a decade since he left, so the majority of the crucial development times of my youth, I had no father. And as we all know, growing up with a single parent in a household means that children are more often likely to live close or at the poverty line while the parent tries to make ends meet. And this is very difficult for everyone, and growing up fatherless brings its own difficulties for men. And I, as a man, statistics about single-parent household make you believe that every boy who grows up with one parent ends up on drugs, unsuccessful, and in prison. But that's simply not true, because growing up fatherless, I, as a man, have stayed away from destructive activity and crime, and have instead moved into being a single entrepreneur and towards a mission of changing lives in a positive way. I simply didn't need my father. This is the men's edition of What Happened to the Father Figure. Welcome. I am your host, Chris Lay. This is the Unspoken Podcast Show. Do not forget it. It is the Unspoken Podcast Show. That is what it is. Don't forget to tag. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to like. We're talking daddy issues. We're talking father figures. And I sat down one day and thought to myself, what happened to the father figure? And I'm not talking about our biological fathers. I'm also talking basically on father figures. And I'm going to define what a father figure is. A father figure is an older man who is respected for his paternal qualities and may be an emotional substitute for your father, for a father. So a father figure can also be called a father image. So today is going to be all about giving, all right? It's going to be all about the grieving of growing up without a father in men, in boys, and that is what we're talking about. I feel like there's really not much platform for men. I feel like there's really not much platform for boys to express, to talk about. And I know there is a gap. I know there is a wound. So I do hope I talk about this in a very short period of time, because I don't want to make it too long. And I'm not going to do a part 2 of this because, I don't want to make it very long. But if you would want a part 2, that would be great. So did you know that we have 3 kinds of men? So we have the fatherless son, we have the rejected son, and the perfected son. Okay, so in today's episode, we will be breaking down these 3 sons, and I will be sharing, number 1, the effects. Okay, the effects of these sons, the effects of what growing up without a father in these 3 men, the fatherless son, the rejected son, and the perfected son, has done or has or is. And number 2, how to overcome the grieving of growing up without a father in men and in boys. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get right into it. So Stephen Kendrick, okay, before I did this episode, I had to read a lot. Number one, I think I always talk about how I'm reading this sociology book, which gives me some points because I like to read. I just like to read. I like to know. I'm very curious human being. Okay, so Stephen Kendrick outlined the 7 roles of a father, or rather the 7 roles a father plays in the life of his own family, sons inclusive. So today is a men's edition. We're basically just talking about boys and men today. So number 1, okay, the role of a father in a boy's life or a son's life is he is a provider to the boy. Number 2, a protector to the boy, a leader to the boy, a teacher, helper, encourager, and lastly, I think that is the last one. Yes, a father. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. So a protector, provider, protector, leader, teacher, helper, and an encourager. So if we're talking about child development, a father is needed in child development. I think sometimes fathers don't realize how important they are actually to their children. And I'm a neutral party in this. I'm going to play the neutral party. So I'm not for either side. I'm just speaking as a neutral party. I think that's how best, if you're going to curate or moderate something, I want to moderate it at neutral. So even as we go on in this episode, I want you to understand that I'm not for or against, but I'm going to speak my truth and what I think, give my 2 cents on this matter going forward. Yes, I do hope that you agree. So every boy will emulate a man. Every boy will emulate a man. And I'm just going to start by saying I have seen how, if you noticed in the first introduction, there was some sort of piece of poetry, we heard from the guy earlier, which was me playing a guy role. So I'm going to say Chris. We heard from Chris earlier, who was talking about how his father left, divorced his mom. And, I gave a little illustration. And this boy is now grown up. And he's grown up fatherless. He's okay. And he is saying, I am okay. All right. So the normalization of fathers being absent in kids' lives, in boys' lives, the normalization of men and boys normalizing the abandoning of their fathers in their lives, therein is the root cause of their problems. Now, so many boys and so many men I've seen have normalized it, saying, my father left, it is okay, right? So I'm going to talk about the effects. That's when we're going to go to the effects. And I really want to hurry up on this. I don't want to waste a lot of time because I know that I can talk. Okay, so we're going to move on to, like I said, I was going to break down the types. Okay, I said we've got 3 sons, 3 types of men in society today, 3 types. We've got 4 naturally, which is the normal son. But I'm going to talk about the 3 dysfunctional people, all right? And not that you're dysfunctional per se, it's just that you're just missing a father figure. So number 1, the fatherless son, the rejected son, and the perfected son. So I'm going to start with the fatherless son. Who is a fatherless son? Now, a fatherless son is someone who just hasn't had a father figure at all in their lives. Okay? At all. Number 1, it's your father died at an early age. Okay? My condolences if you're listening to this and you've got a father who died at an early age. You've just never really had a father figure in your life. Well, apologies for that. May his soul rest in peace. And number 2 is the fatherless son. You just didn't have an example. You just didn't have a father. And what I mean is you just didn't have a father. He just has never been there. That even if he has been present, even if he is around, you just don't have a father. You have no father figure. You have no example to follow. Now, if you've been paying attention earlier, I mentioned that Every boy will emulate a man somehow. That is where the crave comes in, the crave of a father. Okay, which I'm going to go into later on. So we've talked about the fatherless son, number one. I've broken down who a fatherless son is. Number two, I'm going to talk about the rejected son. So the rejected son can be, broken down into three parts. Okay, so the rejected son is, number one, you were rejected at birth, okay? Your dad wasn't just present from the onset, or he ran off and married off a side chick, or married off, somewhere else, or has another family, or he just rejected you from birth. There is the rejected son, part one of who the rejected son is. The rejected son, part two, is you were just rejected, intellectual rejection. Now, intellectual rejection is based on the standards set by your dad, and you just don't reach those goals. You're just not really what he wanted you to be in general. You were just not that. You were not it. You were not it. He is the businessman. He is the biggest, richest man, on earth. And it could be on earth, or probably in your city. He's just it. And you are just not. You don't even aspire to be like your dad at all. And there's that gap of understanding. There's that gap of mutual understanding. Your dad just doesn't see you for who you are. There's that gap that even if he's alive, even if he's there, he just doesn't see you. He just doesn't recognize who you are. He doesn't recognize that you're the guy who just likes to sing. You understand what I mean? You just love to sing. You love music. Okay. He doesn't recognize that there is that gap. You're rejected intellectual. So there's that part B. And then part three of a rejected son is you're the stepson. Okay, so there is blended families, and I think I want to talk about that after this edition. After I do the women's edition, I'm going to talk about having a stepson, just the step family, the blended family. I think I'm going to do an episode on that and just how to manage that. So probably you're a stepson and you have been rejected by your stepfather. So probably your mother has married and your stepfather just does not recognize you. He doesn't even have regard of who you are and says, you're not my son, cuts you out. You're not my son. You brought an illegitimate son in my house. I don't recognize who he is. So there is those. And then you have this gap, and probably you really just want a father figure. So there is that gap, that emptiness, that abandonment wound is there fresh. So that's number two of the rejected son. We move on to number three, which is the perfected son. Now, the perfected son is very common. Okay, when you look at the perfected son, you look at him in hindsight, you will think he has the perfect life, and that is who he actually portrays himself to be. So if you are the perfected son, you go around in town moving around in these cars, you try to show that you have it all figured out, you're rich, your dad owns this, your dad owns that, you are the perfected son, quote unquote, yet there is a gap. There is a gap between you and your dad. There is a huge gap because now he has placed you on a pedestal that he expects you to reach. And you know deep down your heart that that is not even what you want. But the difference between the perfected son and the son that has been rejected, the intellectually rejected guy who's just a soccer player, who just wants to be a soccer player, and he's just a soccer player. The difference between them is that the perfected son refuses to admit that he refuses to admit in the face of his father who he really is and who he really wants to be, because he is chasing the footsteps of his dad, and he's chasing the acceptance. He wants the acceptance, so he will reject who he really is, who he was really born to be, just to put a smile on daddy's face. And he walks around being the perfected son that you think he is, but deep down he's really dying. So that's the difference, and I hope that you've put the distinctions between them. They're very similar sons, the intellectually rejected son and the perfected son are very similar yet different. And I hope you've caught the distinction. The intellectually rejected guy is the one who is perfect. He knows who he is, and so he has just gone off to be, what he wants to be. If he wants to be a musician, he's broken away to that. And the perfected son is different in that for him, he's still in his bubble and he still wants to be accepted by daddy. He still wants daddy to see him for who he is. He still wants daddy to see him he still wants the love, rather. Okay, so those are the types of sons, and I have broken them down. I have broken them down in what they're supposed to be in terms of the three kinds. And so we're just going to get right into it without beating around any bushes. Having said that, who is a father supposed to be in a child's life? A father supports and encourages. A father is there to support and encourage. Of course, mothers nurture. Okay, they're nurturers. They're the ones, but they're the ones who, they birthed you and all that. And we all know what a mother is, right? But there is just this significant role. There's this significant role that comes with a father's words. When a father says, "You can do it. I believe in you," there is just something. And so in a man, in a son, it plays the biggest role. You have no idea. Okay? It plays the biggest role. When a father says to a son, "Son, you can do it. Son, you got this." It's heaven for him. And I'm pretty sure most fathers don't know this because their fathers didn't know that. And their father didn't punch it down to them. And so I believe that what we lack in today's society, especially in men, is what society has painted onto men, that umwaume dalila, umwaume doesn't show weakness. And so many boys want to be, strong, even in the face of their fathers. They want to be. But then I believe again that one thing that fathers I think are not getting is that your son wants to be weak in your face, in your sight. He wants to be weak when he comes to you. He wants to be weak because he can't be weak to the whole world. He can't be weak to his girlfriend. He can't be weak to his wife because of what society has made him to be. So if you are a father figure in his life, he wants to come to you and cry. He wants to come to you and say, "Dad, I can't do it. Dad, it's hard," in tears. So it becomes very hard if you are giving your son a war and all his life he has to defend. All his life he has to be the strong one, the perfected son. He has to be the brave one all his life. Then that becomes a problem because now there's a gap of a father figure in his life because he's taking care of himself. He's growing up to be like you. And I think that is therein now again is the root cause, because what is he learning? What will he teach his own son? And he will teach his son what you have taught him to be. So I think for me, the problem is with the parents. Who your child becomes is you. And I think this is probably where parents or society doesn't really understand. The degeneration of society when single parenting becomes anything approximately the norm, it is not a good idea. And that's what it has become. Single parenting has now become a norm that it's being praised. Single mothers are being praised. But if you hear what I have to say about single parenting, I think it's very selfish. If you knew getting pregnant for him was going to make you become a single parent, then why? Because I've come to understand that having two parents in the home raising the kid is what you want for your kid. Because when a child has to go back and forth, mommy to daddy, daddy to mommy, do you know what that does to them? It displaces them. It displaces them in many more ways than one. And I'm not saying that people with both parents in the house are perfect. Let's not forget that there is the perfected son. The perfected son has two parents, yet his father is present, yet the father is absent. And so marriage isn't for the people who are married. It is for the children. And this is something that Jordan Peterson said in one of his, I listen a lot to what the guy has to say, very wise man. He said marriage is not for the married people, it's for the children. And if you can't handle it, grow the hell up, quote unquote, in his own words. And I believe so. If you're not mature enough to handle a marriage or handle children, don't have them, don't get married, period. It's as simple as day. And I love the fact that the Bible itself has said this. You know, the reason why other religions are very, very successful is that even if they don't know, they have principles of the Bible. The Bible is very wise. In most Muslim homes, they have the Quran and they actually have the Bible. Why? These are things that we really don't pay attention to. The Bible has principles that when you follow, it works for you. And I think that is the mystery that so many people are trying to understand. But then, the Bible says that, the mysteries of the word will not be revealed to you so long as if you view it with your physical, in paraphrase, if you view it with your physical eyes, you will never really, it will not be revealed to you. If you come to the Bible with more physical eyes, you will never reap the fruits. So then what am I talking about? Fatherhood, family life, marriage, kids, all this determines who you become as a man later on. And I feel like that's what's shaped most of our men in today's society, The crave of a father comes in men. There is always as well an abandonment wound. And I feel like so many people are living with abandonment wounds. And so we're going to move on to the effects. What are the effects of a father's absence? Number one, trust issues. Yeah, trust issues. You will have trust issues. Men without a father figure or grieving the loss of a father or grieving the fact that there's just no father figure, will have trust issues. And many young men are taking up the head of the house. I've heard so many friends of mine say, I'm the only man, I'm the man of the house. The fact that my father left, I'm the man of the house. And hey, I'm not saying that's bad. All I'm saying is many young men are taking up the head of the house figures because they realize that if not their fathers, they have to. Because naturally a man is a born leader. That we do not dispute. A man is a natural born leader, so that cannot be taken away from a man. I see that in my young brother. He's 6 years old and he just wants to lead his older sister for some reason. He wants to tell her what to do. He wants to sort of say, no, do this, do that. He's not a man. It's innate. It's in him, right? But that born leadership can become a distraction if it is not mentored. That bringing me to my point to say boys are lacking mentorship. What happened to the father figure in society today? Where is it? Where are men that should mentor men? For me, I tend to think, are they just going around, sleeping around? Why are fathers not mentoring their sons? What are they doing? Young men are taking up these responsibilities, munganda, without any guidance, without an example of how to do it. Yes, it's there, but if it's not managed, it can lead to destruction. And that's how we're seeing so many damaged young men, so many abusive, destructive young men, and they don't even understand where that's coming from. It's because of the abandonment wound, because of an absent father. Present fathers as well are absent, and they're either abusive towards the boy's mother. And so as a son, you're watching your father, even if he's present, you're watching him abuse your mother. And then you grow bitter, you grow resentful, you hate him, and so you push yourself to be nothing like your dad. But then for you who pushes yourself to be nothing like your dad, it ends up in two ways. It's either you become like him, you become everything like your dad, or you become the opposite of him, which is a very good thing. But then I'm here for those that become like their dads, and so they hate themselves. And so you know what? In them hating themselves, they become abusive. They become abusive towards their girlfriends, towards people around them, because they hate themselves. They hate that they're the spitting image of their fathers, and so you don't want to face yourself. You don't even want to look yourself in the mirror because you're everything like your dad. Hence, you become bitter, you become angry, you become this abusive, aggressive man that society has made you to be, and then you hate your dad. Well, these are the effects of what it does. You become growing up without a dad, and also you have a lot of trust issues. You have low self-esteem. The importance of a father in a young man's life is kumpera to courage. Most young men want someone they can look up to. They want someone that they can go to and say, Ama, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? You know what I mean? I think, every man needs such a one that they can go to, that they can say, Ayama, ineniapa. You know what I mean? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? I have this. There's this thing that I want to do. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? Every young man deserves that. And so when that's not there, this young boy will abuse and become everything that is wrong. So men and boys always need that father figure, that dad aspect, in their lives, to always just shield them and tell them, Yama, what should I do here? They always need that, they always need that clock, that accountability is very important in their lives. And so that's where now the low self-esteem in the confidence comes in, because a boy who grows up without a father, or where there's just no father figure in a boy's life, he's searching an image, and a boy will always emulate a man, like I always said. So it's either he's emulating someone else, and this could be a bad man or a good man. And I think that's what single mothers have to really, really, really put in place, because as a woman, as a mother, there's really only so much that you can do. And there is only so much that you can do. And I believe that sons that have grown up with their single moms always say, no, my mom, she was my dad and my mother. And I know, yes, I was raised by a single mother. So I know that argument, that excuse. However, deep down, that there is that emptiness, there's that gap, that a father could have been better, rather, if there was that father figure. And I think that is why this episode is here today, because we're talking about the effects, and the effects thereof for you as a man is that you somehow did lack confidence. You somehow did lack self-esteem, and that is our second effect. The third effect is difficulty in bonding. Now, speaking about bonding, a father or a man is responsible to his son in teaching him how to bond, or rather, a father sets the standard for a child's future relationships. In men, actually, in boys. It could be both in women and men, but very, very essential in boys and men. They set the standard for men and how to make relationships with both sexes, actually. So a boy who grows up without a father, or fatherless, or without a father, or has an absent father yet present father, these guys, the perfected son who just really has no relationship with his dad at all, there's difficulty bonding with other men. Okay, they don't know how to bond with other men. They just don't. They have no idea on how to bond with other men. There's this antisocial behavior that's there, the aggression, the defensive mechanisms. They just don't know how to relate. And so understanding the world, and navigating through relationships is very difficult for them to build. And so they can only, like I always say, they can only learn so much from a mother. But there is so much that a father will come in and tell his son from his experience what it is. And so a father has to teach a boy how to relate with men and how to relate with women. And so the effects thereof for the effects of not having an absent father, or just not having a dad at all, is you have difficulty bonding. And the fourth and last effect is emotional distress. Emotional distress. I think I've talked about them. You will have serious issues. You know what I mean? And we always refuse to admit, we always, try to run away from the fact that we're injured. We have this abandonment wound. We don't need a dad. I don't need a father. So there is this, but then that's your emotional distress, because you're constantly frustrated. You're burdened with this responsibility that you burden on your shoulder. You're like, no, I need to do this. I need to do that. And I am sorry that you've had to carry the world on your shoulders as a young man, and you've lost your childhood. Because you're constantly taking responsibility for taking care of your family because your dad was absent, because your father was just not there to provide for the family. You didn't see a man who would provide. You didn't see a man who would take you out and show you how to be a man. There was no, so you had to pick yourself up. For me, I am sorry that you had to pick yourself up and take it all and be the man. You are the one who had to take your siblings to school. You're the one who had to provide. You're the one who had to do this, do that. And so you never really saw a father figure at all, and you didn't think you needed one. And so these are the effects that come because you're constantly distressed emotionally. And for some, that may have not even been your effect. For you, you're just aggressive. You just became this aggressive guy. You just became this defensive guy. And not because you chose to, but because of what your world around you was. You constantly watched your dad beat up your mom. And now you're this man that you don't even want to be like him. But then for some reason, you're him. You know what I mean? And you constantly find yourself, maybe you just slap your girlfriend. You don't even know why you've slapped her, but then probably it's because of what has shaped you into the man that you actually are. Or maybe you just really hate your dad and it's made you hate your dad. It's made you hate men. You know what I mean? And I don't even want to go deep into these things because it goes deep. Other men have been abused sexually by their own fathers, their uncles, and so sexually actually. And so they become these gay men. And so in case you're listening to this and you're gay and you found yourself in that situation because of what happened to you in your home, you were sexually abused and now you're gay. It's not your fault, right? And so in case you're listening to this and you're homophobic, I think before you hate on certain people, before you hate on the gays, and trust me, I am not supporting or encouraging homosexuality, but we can always find a way outside hatred. And for me, that is my method. There is a way outside hatred to change mindsets. It's just a mindset. It's not a fact. It's just a mindset. They become who they are now because of, and that's something that I'm going to talk about later on in the episode. So those are our effects, guys. Those are the effects of growing up with grieving, not having a dad in your life. And so we're going to move on to how to overcoming it. I know it's been long, but we're closing up now. How to overcome, how to overcome the grief of growing up without a father as a man. So remember, I started with the 3 types of sons, right? So there's the rejected son. Okay, there's the rejected son, the perfected son, and the fatherless son. So for the fatherless son, this is how you can overcome it. And for the fatherless, there just really wasn't a father figure from the start, from birth, never. Number 1 is forgive your dad. Now, I know that there's probably someone who's told you to forgive your dad, or you've heard it somewhere and you're like, nah, this guy was just never around. And I know that there's pain. He just wasn't there for you. And probably now you're older, you're a man now, you've managed, you've made your due, right? Number 1, forgive your dad. And I know you've heard this a million times. I know. I have heard that too a million times, but I'm speaking from a man's edition. So number 1 is forgive your dad. Number 2 is be anything but your dad. Try, at least try to be anything else but your father. Okay. And as you are doing that, as you are becoming anything but your dad, learn from him. Learn from him. Your dad was probably never around. Okay. Learn from that. What was there to learn? Learn what's there that my dad, nothing good came from Nazareth, right? But then we're told Jesus came from Nazareth, right? There was nothing good. So probably there's nothing good you see in your father. There's really nothing good you see from your dad. It's like he's a good for nothing. He's a coward. Yes. Many fathers are cowards. Trust me, they are cowards. But it's not intentional. And I feel like learn from him. Pick out what is there about this man that I can learn. Pick out 1 or 2 lessons. There is always something you can learn from a man. Number 4, reach out. This is how to overcome the grief of growing up without a father. Reach out to your dad. Sit down. Be the man. If he was never the man, if he was the coward, be the man. Reach out. Talk to him. Why? Ask. Seek your closure. Get your closure. Ask why. If he's late, like I said earlier, my condolences. There's really nothing you can do about that one. For the people that have just really, you've just never really had a dad. Okay, you have no father. I think seek a father figure. It could be an uncle. It could be a mentor at church. It could be just someone you look up to. Reach out to them. Say, look, I'm a young man. I've grown up without a father. I need guidance. Every man needs mentorship. Every man needs guidance from another man. Okay, embrace the idea of what is left of your father. In case your father is still alive and he was an absent father and he was just never around, embrace what is left of him. Trust me, fathers need their sons as much as sons need their fathers. Therein lies the secret. Something that you don't know, your father knows, and there is something that your father can give to you that you don't have. So reach out, okay? Well, if you don't think you can overcome it using these ways, be kind to share what you think. And the other way of overcoming for the rejected sons, and remember in the rejected sons, I mentioned about 3 sons. Probably you're rejected because you're a stepson. Probably you're rejected because you're not the standard that your father wanted. You're just not what your father wanted. You're probably a designer and your father wanted you to be this banker or this lawyer. Okay, and the other thing of the rejected son is you were rejected at birth. Okay, so how can you overcome it if you were a rejected son? Number 1, stand up to your dad and be honest with him. Recognize and accept that this is who I want to be. And this is also on the perfected sons. Probably you're just lying to everybody. You're the perfected son. You want everybody to see that you are daddy's boy. You are following in his footsteps, but that's not really where your passion lies, because you just want to be accepted. You want to be validated. You're the perfected son. You want validation. Constantly you're seeking validation. Here's how to get free from it. You know what I mean? You're the rejected dad. Stand up to your dad and be honest with him and say, Dad, look, I know you want me to take over the company. I know you want me to do this, but hey, I'm dropping the books here because this is the path that I want to walk. All right, you're a man. Be the man, okay? And tell him to say, good dad, look, I appreciate who you are. You've done all these big achievements and I know I'm the perfected son, but hey, I just love to draw. I love art. Allow me to be an artist. Stand up to your dad. Because if you don't, you will do the same to your son and you won't realize it. Subconsciously, you will be pushing your son in the same direction that your dad pushed you in. And trust me, that'll be messy, because you're going to grow a generation of people, a generation of kids that want to be validated, that want to sit on a certain pedestal that you have created. If your dream as a father is to create a legacy, allow your kids to choose whether to continue in that legacy or not. Do not build legacies for your children to continue in. Build legacies for other people. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, if you want your children to live up to your dream, trust me, they become the perfected children and they will be miserable as hell. They'll be miserable as hell and they will raise miserable kids. And trust me, we don't want that kind of a society. Fathers with standards can be very, very, very manipulative to their kids, especially the boys, because the boys want to be validated. They want validation from daddy. They want daddy to look at them and say, oh, wow, good, well done. But then this is how you overcome it. Stand up to your dad and tell him no. All right? It's the Bible will tell you, obedience, this, that. But then we also have to look at the example. Look at Abraham. Abraham had his parents, right? But God told him what? God said, Abraham, get out. Get out of that house. Without your father, stand up, go. Leave your father's house. Leave, go. And I will show you where we are going. So imagine how it was. The guy just stood up one day and said, Dad, I'm leaving. I'm pretty sure his dad has plans for him. You understand? So I think there is a thin line to certain things. When your destiny calls, it calls. Number 2 is break away from his shadow and grow to be your own man. Stop hiding behind daddy. Stop hiding behind, be the man you're supposed to be and create who you're supposed to be with their guidance. Parents are only there to guide us, not for you to follow in footsteps and be their shadows. You're not there to be a shadow of your dad. So I'm speaking to that child. I'm speaking to you who's been the perfected son for a very long time. You've just been this perfected son. You've been rejected and you want the validation of your father. Break away. Show him. Number 3, show him your value and teach him to respect it. Period. Stand up. Be a man. I'm not saying fight your father, but I'm saying show him that you are worth the respect and you are worth the honor as much as you honor him. And so I think I've covered a huge gap, a huge ground. This is what I just had to say on the episode today. And this was a men's edition. What happened to the father figure? And this is something that lies deep in my heart. And I know it's been a long episode, but I just wanted to break it out like this. Many men out there don't have platforms. And if you're a man and you're listening to this, share this with other men. What do you have to say? Comment. If you want more, we can talk about it. You know what I mean? Talk about it. Open up. My advice to men is have friends that you can share certain things with. Don't keep things to yourself. Tears are not weakness. I think for me, it's strength. And believe it or not, men are the weakest when it comes to emotions rather. Women are even stronger than men, because once you break a man's heart, trust me, he's broken. And women can move on from these things. They cry, yes, but hey, for a man, it hurts really deep. And in case you're a woman, you didn't know this, it's true. So I think this is the effects and how to overcome not growing up with a father. And so for me, the take home is, don't hate your father. Do not hate your father. Yes, he made his mistake. Yes, he wasn't around. Of course, we get it, right? Try to move on from it. Try to overcome it without hating him. Forgive him. Reach out. If you can seek closure from him, seek closure from him today. Find out. Get his brain. Pick it up. You know what I mean? If you can help him, help him. If he's a drunk, continue being there for him. These things are easier said than done. But it is true. I had a conversation the other day with my biological dad. And I have a stepdad, by the way. Yeah, so I understand in case you're a displaced child. I understand. I had a conversation with my biological dad who has a stepson, and he was just complaining to me and saying, Chrisley, look, this is the situation. And he said, look, this boy, he's into drugs, he's drinking, he's doing this, he's complaining. I said, I don't know what to do. So he came to me for some advice. And I'm really glad, I was honored that my biological dad came to me for some advice. And I told him, I said, I understand he is your stepson. However, you sending him out of the house is not the option. Be there for him. And that is what I told him. Be there for him when he needs you. Because right now he is going through his phase. And probably there is something that he's craving. He's craving something. And that's why he's out there seeking it. He wants to numb. He wants to fill up. There is a void. And that's what I told him. There is a void. You're his stepdad. What are you going to do? And so I think that's a challenge to most dads. That's a challenge to most fathers. I feel like there is what happened to the father figure. And I can't wait for us to go into the women's edition, which is going to be the second episode, guys. I can't wait, because for women, it's even bigger. We have father figures sleeping with their own kids. Hey, for us, it's even worse. But that's it for the men's edition. Comment. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to like. As for me, it's goodbye.